The script's kind of interesting. One night I just flipped it open and read it, and I thought, this is kind of a bizarre story and a little different.
I'm Sue, and that's my brother Todd.
So?
I'm sorry.
Sorry for what?
Trying to steal your car.
I hadn't done anything in 4 years as an actor and hadn't planned on doing any more, really. I was kind of enjoying it behind the camera.
Okay, go ahead.
Whenever Clint chooses to act and direct in a movie, and besides the fact that he's, producing and thinking about the music throughout, he's got a lot going on.
I always swore after a couple of years, I'd gravitate out of acting, and here I am, still doing it as a derelict.
I couldn't imagine it being anybody else when I read it, It was just one of those things. It has to be Clint, or you shouldn't make the movie.
Ever notice how you come across somebody once in a while that you shouldn't have fucked with? That's me.
It just felt like an extension of his Dirty Harry character and of his westerns and so forth, and seemed to fit perfectly into the sort of the arc of Clint's career in terms of an actor and a director.
I saw you come around.
Yeah, I came around, yeah. Really, they all lined up beautiful.
When I read it, I thought somebody sort of tailored this for me, but I hadn't talked to any writers or anything. So if it wasn't me, I don't know who they'd gone to. There's not too many actors my age around.
Clint and Rob asked me, they said, did you write that for Clint? And I said no, and I think they're a little bit surprised. I think a lot of people would be scared to play that part, and he took it and not only ran with it, but filled it out even more than was on the page.
Get off my lawn.
Okay, but you better watch your back.
He's a guy who is very, very disturbed about the way culture has gone. He's had a loss in the family. He's estranged from his grown children, and he doesn't like the way the neighborhoods have changed.
The character of Walt is like a lot of men I knew growing up, and I worked constructions, I worked in trades, and I met a lot of those type of guys.
How many swamp rats can you get in one room?
Most people somewhere in their family have had a relative, a father, an uncle that has been off the wall like this.
And we all kind of cringe when they make these really politically incorrect statements.
There's a Mexican, a Jew, and a colored guy go into a bar. The bartender looks up and says, "Get the fuck out of here."
I think Clint felt like he could just tell this story and be truthful to his character, and that character would talk like that and would have those prejudices. He was in Korea, and he's a lonely, cranky guy.
I think he's definitely a racist, and that's what kind of struck me when I first read it, was that he's kind of an unapologetic racist and has no sort of qualms about being completely open about it.
What are you fish heads looking at anyway?
That's the way people talked in Walt's generation. Actually, that's the generation I grew up in, but Walt, he has everybody categorized, and that's just the way he is. He doesn't want anything to do with anybody, and especially people that are different than he is.
Why can't you people just leave me alone?
We brought you some shallots to plant in your garden.
I don't want them.
People can change, especially Walt. He can be really mean at first, but once you actually get to know the person, people can change.
Hmong isn't a place, it's a people. Hmong people come from different parts of Laos, Thailand, and China.
Yeah. Well, how did you end up in my neighborhood then? Why didn't you stay there?
I got a call one day from a friend saying Clint Eastwood is going to do a story with some Hmong stories in it.
Take one. Speed.
We looked at him as a superstar when I first came to America and did not speak English, but saw him on TV. And today, for him to take an interest and say, I want to do a story of the Hmong people, it's just heart-touching.
Most people I've talked to don't know what the Hmong culture is.
Damn barbarians.
Because they helped America during the Vietnam War, they became refugees, and so a lot of them have withstood a lot of sadness, and so they're tough people.
They have a really fascinating story. They're very, very warm, friendly people, and they're a very tight-knit community.
Hmong people, they're always about family, always about bringing together, eating together.
We try to stick to each other, because if we don't help one another, nobody's going to help us.
I appreciate you doing something on your own, but you're the only one I know that's dumb enough to get himself killed trimming a tree branch.
It's interesting how Clint could latch onto a story like this and take it to heart and really want to do a good job and show how important these Hmong people are in our community.
The young always respect the elderly. They teach the young to carry their heritage.
Hmong people believe that the soul resides on the head.
Well, it sounds dumb, but fine.
And also to respect each other, to care for your loved ones.
Feels so good. Smells good, too.
Well, of course. It's Hmong food.
Okay. Can I come back for seconds?
And I guess that's one of the reasons why it kind of helps Walt to realize and appreciate Hmong culture a bit more.
You ladies are wonderful. He changes when he realizes these people are intelligent and they're very respectful of their cultures. But eventually he comes around and befriends these people.
Then it goes to me with a little kid going through, if you want to come up for that.
The thing I love most about the script is how he goes from this rough, grumpy man.
Pilarski'd roll over in his grave if he could see his lawn now.
And you see this amazing transformation at a certain point when he actually starts to take to Tao.
Toad. Nothing, never mind.
He says you have no happiness in your life. It's like you're not at peace.
To see the shaman telling him the way he relates, like, wow, I relate to these Hmong people more than I relate to my kids, like they understand me more.
God, I've got more in common with these gooks than I do my own spoiled, rotten family.
To see the Walt character interact with the Hmong people, just very old school. He's just so out of his element. I just found it hilarious, and I don't take offense. I mean, here's the thing, I come from Asian descent, and I know there are differences in the world, and I love difference, but just to see those two worlds mix, I was really drawn to that.
You can probably think about the Oh, all right.
I think that it's a great thing that Clint was so serious about getting it right and bringing in cultural advisors and making sure that everything was as specific and realistic as it could be.
This represents a traditional Hmong costume, and as you can see, it's very ornate and it's beautiful. This skirt is like an accordion, beautiful design. And this, of course, with the fringe, this is called actually their money belt with all the coins hanging off of it. All of this money represents the wealth of the family. Because of the noise level, it also wards off evil spirits.
What's she saying?
They will not go to her home.
Oh, no, she's not.
Yeah, no, she didn't.
The hardest part was when you're editing those scenes is hoping that you're editing from one side or another side, angle to angle, you're cutting through a sentence correctly. Quite frankly, when we had an interpreter sit down with us, we were very close.
They nailed it. I think they did a great job. I think the sets and the costumes and all that stuff was dead on,
It's fun because in a way you start out with a lot of pre-prejudice and then you work your way out of it through your relationships with various people.
You know something, kid, you're all right.
When I first read the script of Gran Torino, I thought, oh boy, I've got my work cut out for me. This is going to be really interesting and we're going to go down a really wild road, and we did. About half the cast is Hmong, and there are not many Hmong actors, so this involved a lot of digging, making inroads, gaining their trust. The Hmong community is a pretty tight community, and the word really spread around.
The biggest challenges had to have been finding the Sue and Tao roles. They were very meaty characters. They held a lot of weight. That was probably the most challenging, yet the most gratifying once we found them.
At first, I thought that this was not real. Maybe it was a hoax or something, you know? I was skeptical because Hmong people in this industry, why would they want Hmong people when they could get some professional Korean or Chinese actors?
A lot of directors, producers want names. Clint is very much into authenticity. It's not necessarily the name, but the performance.
What are you doing? Thinking.
Baby time is over. Now it's time to knock the ass out of those pricks.
I know you want to hear this, but you have to calm down.
What?
You have to have a clear head, otherwise mistakes get made.
No. Don't let me down, Walt. Not you. This is gonna end today.
When I first saw Vang, I went to St. Paul, and my New York associate had been there for a few days and had been putting some people on tape, and she had sheets of people with their pictures. And I remember the little sheet that Vang filled out with his picture, and I wrote on it, "I heart Vang," because I just loved his face, and I just thought he had this quality that was so open and sweet, and you just wanted him to be okay.
You know, his hair was kind of all sticking up on top of his head, and he just looked kind of out of place, and Clint loved it. When we eventually decided on him, Clint told me and Ellen, be sure you tell him not to cut his hair. I don't want him all looking all slick and everything when he shows up on the set. I like that really, you know, that natural, sort of almost goofy look that he had.
Excuse me, sir. I need a haircut. If you ain't too busy. You old Italian son of a bitch prick barber.
He didn't have any that confidence of somebody who had done a lot of acting, but yet he had enough, he had faith in whatever we told him. So he came along, he was terrific.
When I found out that Clint was doing a movie about Hmong people, I was kind of like happy. I was really happy because, you know, I'm like, Hmong people? What? This is random. But then I was sad because I'm like, I might not be able to star in it.
What's going on? He left without me.
Where? Where'd he go?
He went to Smokies without me.
No! No, Tao! Don't you dare! Stay away from those people! I don't want anyone else getting hurt!
Leave me alone.
No! No, Tao!
She's pretty much like her character, very fun girl, friendly. We wanted the sister to have a slightly more tough edge, a little more protective. She definitely had that, and a great kind of youthfulness about her too, a great teenage quality that we all loved.
Whitney jumped right into it, but I looked at all these people on tapes, and I looked at various interviews of them talking, and then also even playing some of the dialogue, and they seemed to have a natural flair for it. So I figured that once they owned the role, they would do even better.
It's nice of you to kind of look after him like this. He doesn't have any real role models in his life.
Well, I'm not any role model.
But you're a good man, Wally. I wish our father would have been more like you.
Don't go calling me Wally.
I think she's the anchor of the movie in many ways. You know, she's the one that brings Walt out of his shell. She really gets to his heart quickly, and it's for me, it's one of the most magnificent parts of the movie.
Hi there, Walt.
Look, I'm not a friend of yours. Why do you insist on calling me Walt?
Sorry? Mr. Kowalski.
The role of the priest, Christopher Carley's part. Everyone wanted that part. Everyone wants to work with Clint anyway. But that was a really juicy role. And again, Clint didn't care about having a star in that role. At one point he said to me, "Where are the young Pat O'Briens?" And I just got it. I got what he wanted. And right after that we saw Christopher Carley.
I heard there was some trouble in the neighborhood. Why didn't you call the police?
He just looked like a priest. He had this open Irish face, red hair. I showed it to Clint. I was kind of excited about it because I thought this might really be what he's talking about. And Clint said he looks like Spencer Tracy, and I knew he was going to cast him at that point.
There was a lot of good actors, did very good readings on tape, but his was a combination of his delivery and also his look. Because with every role you're looking for, a lot of times you have a lot of good people that audition, but there may not be the right look for the picture.
What are you going to do, Walt?
Whatever it is, they won't have a chance.
He's really not interested in somebody's A-list, B-list rating. He just knows what he likes, and that's what he trusts. It's a lot of fun for me to be able to find people for him.
I like to see new people come along and have opportunities, but at the same token, if it's somebody who's well known and it suits the film, then I go ahead and go for it. If I can use somebody who's lesser known, but they happen to fit the role, then that's fine. There's no real rule to it. Every picture has its own personality.
stop. Okay.
Making a film with Clint is great fun for all of us because it's an opportunity for all of us to get back together again.
I know. But the father put that up.
You hear a lot about the Clint Eastwood sets, how they do not very many takes and it's very efficient, and they're ahead of schedule and under budget, and every bit of that was true. I was amazed, and it was just a well-oiled machine.
And on so many movie sets, there's this jockeying that goes on when you first start out. It's all these new people coming together for the first time and trying to understand each other. But on a Clint set, all that is gone. It's just a group of people who know each other very well getting together to focus on making the best movie they can.
Just close me in and go to lunch.
I love working with Clint because he trusts you and he trusts your work.
It makes everybody else's job a lot easier when you see your director cool and confident, you know, right behind the camera. You're like, wow, he's not worrying, so why should I worry?
Working on Clint Eastwood's set, I would have to say it's a wonderful vacation. Everyone is really chill and down to earth, and even Clint Eastwood himself is a really great guy, and he allows an actor to do what an actor should do and just live the moment.
You don't mess with Fresno girls.
I'm not one of those guys who likes to show that there's a lot of magic in it. If there is any magic in filmmaking, it should be very subtle. But for the most part, it's just everybody doing their job and participating. It's a fun process. When it doesn't become fun, you won't see me doing it anymore.
I guess because you start in a fairly dark place with this Archie Bunker character, to watch the movie kind of get lighter and lighter and see him loosen up and all that, I mean, that's when it just becomes this irresistible journey that you never want to end.
The fact that neighborhoods change and different groups of people come in and displace the groups that are there, I mean, that's something that goes on every day in cities throughout the United States. So it's a whole other reason why this story is so easy for people to relate to.
I have a lot of hope, and it just takes one voice, and I'm hopeful that people will, take a moment just to get to know their neighbors and learn why the Hmong people are in America and who we really are and what is it we want to get out there.
I did like the Hmong people. I have great respect for them. I have great respect for the enthusiasm they put forth on this project, because they could have easily just said, no, we don't want to be part of it. But I think they were flattered that somebody wanted to do a picture that involved their people. It was a big pleasure for me to work with them.
Guys, thank you all for a great show. That is a picture wrap.
Grandpa, when did you get the vintage car?
1972. It's been years since before you were born.
It's not really a car picture. The car is just a symbol of part of Walt. Walt sort of is the Gran Torino. He's worked on him in the factory, and he's as antique as they are.
Yo, now that's a nice car.
Hell yeah. 1972 Gran Torino fastback.
Yo, Cobra jet engine. Hey, yo, man, it's still in mint condition.
Most kids are interested in cars when they grow up, and in Walt's case, he's always interested in cars because he was in that business.
It's his pride. It's his, I guess, last standing thing he could claim and be proud of, because he made the car himself and he loves it.
He put the steering column in that vehicle, and it's his prized possession. He allowed himself one beautiful thing.
One of my favorite scenes in this movie is the scene where Walt is polishing the Gran Torino, and he goes up on the porch and he sits down and he has a beer as the sun's setting.
It's sweet.
I think that's a moment that so many men can relate to, is just that feeling of satisfaction of, you know, owning the car that you love and taking care of it and shining it up and having it out there for people to see.
Most of the cars that I liked growing up were all 30s cars because they weren't making cars during the war. So the 40s cars were really in demand. My first car was a 32 Chevy Coupe. It was all rusted out and it cost $25. And I was a kid, and that was my first car.
When I was younger, I had quite a few different cars. I don't know really if I had any dream cars. I just usually looked for something that was fast. I didn't really care what it was, you know. I've always been kind of into fast cars.
My dad always had cool convertibles, and I always loved them. And they were big. It was either a Lincoln or a Caddy. I always thought when I grow up, I want an Eldorado Cadillac like my dad, you know. I never got one.
The 72 Gran Torino that we have in this movie is particularly familiar to me. I mean, I was growing up in high school, I had a 72 Cutlass, and I had a friend who had a 72 Gran Torino, so that's where I developed a real love of cars, especially cars from this era.
Owning a car is like a rite of passage for most men. They are able to buy something, or maybe they're handed down something from their parents, or maybe they work and they buy something and go out there and express themselves with it. This is me. This is what I am. This is how I want the world to interpret my personality.
The first time I had my own car, that was a very proud moment for me, I'm not gonna lie.
I think every adolescent goes through that feeling of attaining freedom when you finally get your wheels, you know, and you can leave the nest and you can go out with your buddies, and then more importantly, eventually pick up girls and take them away from their homes and on dates.
If he doesn't ask you out, I'm gonna ask you out.
He beat you to it.
Really?
They're taking the bus.
No, you can't take the bus. Gotta get you something more stylish than that. How about that?
The Gran Torino.
Yeah.
You'd let me take the Gran Torino.
I think that men love cars because the better their car looks, the more manly they feel. Like, you know, they can get girls easier, I guess. Not true.
Performance cars, fast cars, sports cars, muscle cars, they all speak to our own personalities. And guys would tend to want to choose the car that they feel would express themselves the best.
The Gran Torino, I think, would match Walt's personality kind of like to a T. It's kind of, you know, it's got that to it. So, I mean, you can't get more testosterone out of a car than like a Gran Torino.
Most men appreciate cars on a very deep level. They can appreciate them for their performance, for their looks, for how they make them feel when they're behind the wheel.
When you're young, you like cars with a lot of flash, convertibles, that kind of thing. And when you're older, you like cars that have a lot of iron around them, in case you pile it up.
My dream car now, it would be one of the early 70s muscle cars, probably not a Gran Torino, but it'd be like a big block, GM car.
My dream car would be a 365 GTP Ferrari or a Daytona Spider.
A Corvette, a black Corvette. I don't know why, but I like black.
Porsche 911, that's me.
Maybe a 95 Buick Park Ave, the supercharger.
I would love to be driving an old 68 fastback Mustang like Queen drove in Bullet, because that was one of my favorite movies, and I love that car.
Maybe an Aston Martin, as long as somebody else is paying for the oil changes and the dings on the bumpers, because I hear an oil change is like $700, so I think my love affair would end there.
When I go through midlife crisis, I'll probably buy a Viper. But we'll see, you know. Hopefully I'll never go through midlife crisis.
Clint's a car guy. He likes cars. He knows a lot about cars. He's probably a better mechanic than most people would think. You know, if there's something goes wrong with a car on the set or something, he's He's the first to come and analyze it, and he's usually pretty good at it. The problem with getting cars for our business is there's two ways to go. The collectors don't want to get their cars dirty, and the guys that just rent the cars to you are mostly pretty rough cars. So you're trying to find that fine line, especially with Clint. He doesn't like anything that looks like it was a restoration or a classic car. He wants it to look like it was supposed to look at the time. So it's quite a search, and you usually go to swap meets and stuff like that to find that stuff. This car was owned by a classic car broker that had a bunch of cars. We just found it on the internet in a old Ford Trader magazine. Clint really liked it. The color was fine, and it runs great. The interior was great, so we were pretty lucky.
And brought it to Michigan, and when we finished, we were talking about selling it there locally, so we didn't have to haul it all the way back to California. And then, as the movie progressed, and we all became rather fond of the car, I discussed it with Clint again. I said, maybe you want to keep this thing, or you want to send it back? And he says, yeah, let's hold on to this car. It's been done right by us, so let's see what happens.
To a lot of people, cars are just a means of transportation. They get in them and they drive around to where they need to go. But for a lot of other people, a certain subset of society, there are folks that really treasure their car.
I work in the Ford factory for 50 years, and he's out selling Japanese cars.
You made cars?
Yeah. I put the steering column in this GRAN TORINO in 1972.
Generationally and culturally, Walt and Tao are able to bond when they're talking about the car, when they're talking about something other than their immediate relationship, and that's really kind of where they find that connection.
Walt knows he's got to help Tao, or wants to help Tao, and so the way he helps him is the only way he knows. He's not sending him to college. He's not going to try to teach him philosophy or how to turn the other cheek or any of that stuff. He just shows him what he knows.
Well, you are a pussy, you know. You want to hang out with guys like that. What was your initiation supposed to be? My GRAN TORINO? Christ Almighty.
Part of Walt giving Tao that car is not giving it to his sons, because they didn't earn it, and he did. He definitely earned it.
He says to him, he says, "You're my friend, you've come a long way."
And so it stands there as the thing that brings Tao and Walt together. It involves a lot with both of the characters. I mean, the GRAN TORINO might win an Oscar too.
Cars are an extension of our personality. Cars really are another layer of clothing. It's something that we put on after we get dressed, and that tells a lot about you.
This is Woodward Dream Cruise, and it's a once a year thing for people that come here.
This is Woodward Avenue, the main thoroughfare through suburbia of Detroit. This used to be the major cruise hangout area for all the teenage kids back in the 50s, 60s, and I don't know if it was about the cars more than it was just getting out there, just meeting people and having a good time, living life, enjoying yourself. You know, stop at the drive-in, just cruise around, just bring out your wheels and cruise. Detroit, the birthplace of the automobile for the most part. Everybody here either works for Ford, GM, Chrysler. If you don't know how to work on your vehicle, you know, people look at you like kind of sideways.
I bought this car 12 years ago. It only took about 20 years to acquire it. So after, 30-some years, I finally got my dream toy. This car is unique. The older cars, the older muscle, they all have distinct lines, and there's something fashionable about every single car. The cars that nowadays, they all look alike.
I enjoy playing with cars. I mean, that's basically what it is. Putting them together, driving them is fun. Okay, and I guess it just keeps us young since I'm old. You know, I just feel younger.
You always have a pretty car, you might play to get the pretty girls. It is the same, they will go hand in hand. And it's just that unique bond between men and cars is just the fact that if they look good, you feel good. I think that's a good part about it.
My relationship to cars probably started when I was about 15 years of age. 59 now. It's been a long relationship with cars. I believe it's either in your blood or it's not. You either design them, or you work on them, or you race them, but it is in your blood, and the relationship is quite close.
In the early 50s and even into the late 60s, you could buy a car to fit your personality. This car, my dad owned one in 1961. It was the first one I had ever seen, and I'd never seen anything as beautiful. When I bought this car, it was something that I wanted to show my dad, part of his history and a part of mine. And so after the restoration was completed, I presented it to my dad, and he had very limited eyesight, but he was able to recognize what had taken place, and I'd never seen a smile on his face as big as it was that day. And we went for a ride.
I have a son that's 17, and actually this is his car. We spent many evenings in the garage wrenching on it. It gave me an opportunity to cultivate a relationship with my son from a man-to-man standpoint.
Well, my dad came home, I was 14 years old, and he said, I think I found it. I said, found what? He said, I found your car. So he bought it for me, $1,200, bucket of bolts, and it took us 6 years. And me and my dad decided it would be a good project to spend some time together. And you have your ups and downs, things don't go right, you have some big time setbacks, but you look back on it and, you know, I'd never sell the car, just the time you spend with your dad and stuff. It's not the car, it's just metal, plastic bolts. It goes way beyond that. It's the people you spend time with, your family, your friends, everybody that helped you out along the way.
For somebody to have actually had a hand in building the car, that gives them a special connection, a connection that most people just would not have.